Oh, yeah. Hello, beautiful nerds. I like to play music to talk over. You've been here before. It's lovely to be your AIGA conference host for the 4th year. If this were the James Bond series, that'd be Daniel Craig. And 2 more, I'll be Sean Connery. We have an amazing lineup of speakers over the next 3 days, speakers that will wow you, some will comfort you, some will challenge you. If this is your first year, let me explain what is about to happen. I produce a podcast called 99% Invisible. It is, you can applaud for that if you want to. It's about design, and I always start each day of the conference with a story. It's kind of like a live podcast, so everyone's always curious about what I'm doing up here. I have music and interview clips that I fire live off the board, and I'll create a show right in front of your eyes. So I'll have images up there, so this is what it sounds like if I press a button right here.
S for sound.
That's me pressing a button.
Sound.
So everything that isn't my voice is going to be controlled right here. I'm going to have some images up there on the board, but this is radio. You can close your eyes. You can chill out. That's okay with me. Everyone good? All right. Here we go. This is 99% Invisible. I'm Roman Mars. Friedrich Froebel was interested in a lot of things. His mom died right after he was born in 1782, and he was somewhat left to his own devices. It was nature that seemed to fascinate him the most. As a kid, he spent his free time wandering the dense forests of Thuringia in what was then Prussia. The author Norman Brosserman studied Froebel for years.
He looked at rocks, he studied the trees, he worked with a forester for a while, he was an apprentice forester.
Froebel worked for a time as a land surveyor, and he even served in the military. And at one point, he became convinced that he should be an architect.
He did everything he needed to become an architect. He took all the right classes.
But a friend convinced him to become an educator instead. And in changing course, Froebel arguably ended up having more influence in the world of architecture and design than any single architect. That's because Friedrich Froebel created kindergarten.
Kindergarten had a tremendous influence on the 20th century. It impacted all parts of society, including art and architecture.
If you ever looked at a piece of modernist architecture or abstract art and thought, my kindergartner could have made that, well, that may be more true than you realize. But Froebel didn't just pull this invention out of thin air. He was poised to start this career in architecture. He got offered a teaching position at an innovative school built on the principles of Johann Pestalozzi.
Pestalozzi is considered the father of modern education, which basically means they will learn better if you treat them well rather than hit them with sticks,
Froebel was intrigued by this whole not hitting kids with sticks thing, and also by Pestalozzi's focus on listening to children, encouraging them to observe and actively learn from nature rather than just passively memorizing and reciting facts. And as Froebel developed as an educator, he added his own ideas. He wanted kids to play with 3-dimensional shapes rather than just drawing on paper. When he was in charge of an orphanage, he learned the importance of early childhood education, teaching kids way, way earlier in their lives than people at the time thought was useful. And he believed that women should play a key role in educating children. His love of nature also led him to spend time in the emerging discipline of crystallography. This diversion in particular to studying crystals helped him understand the microscopic building blocks of the universe. Where most people saw nature in big, flowing, organic shapes like hills and plants and animals, Froebel zoomed in to study the straight lines and geometric forms of crystals. Basically, he saw blocks. And this alchemy of crystals and the teaching of Pestalozzi and a childhood alone in the woods all crystallized into a solid vision. In 1837, when he was 55 years old, Froebel founded the very first kindergarten in Bad Blankenburg, Germany. The word kindergarten was meant to capture two ideas. Kids would play in and learn from nature, but they would also themselves be nurtured and nourished like plants in a garden. Within a decade, the idea of kindergarten was flourishing. There were over 50 of them in operation. Today, we take Froebel's influence on education for granted. Of course, kids should learn interactively. Of course, they should be taught at a young age. But he also contributed something else significant to the world. A set of deceptively simple-looking children's toys called Froebel's Gifts. The first of his gifts was a knitted ball. It was quite literally the starting point. It could be given to children as young as 6 weeks old. A wooden sphere, a cylinder, and a cube followed, showing how different geometries worked. Later came more complex shapes and materials. Blocks gave way to sticks, paper, and wire, and in the end, a completely malleable block of clay. The idea of having kids play with blocks wasn't a Froebelian invention, but Froebel took it to the next level, organizing structured lessons around these objects. These kindergartners weren't just in school, they were in art school, without all the sex and drugs and clove cigarettes. And when they went out into the world changed.
The kind of art that was being made in the 19th century is really different than the kind of art that was made after kids went to kindergarten.
Expressionist, cubist, and surrealist artists like Paul Klee and Vasily Kandinsky attended early kindergartens. Others like Pete Mondrian encountered Froebelian methods as teachers. And it wasn't just artists, there were designers too.
Johannes Itten is a name who's not quite as well known, was the first person that Walter Gropius hired when he started the Bauhaus in 1919. Johannes Itten was an actual kindergarten teacher in Vienna before he goes to the Bauhaus. So it's fascinating to me that Gropius decided to hire a kindergarten teacher as the first hire of this famous school of design.
And some of Froebel's most compelling influences can be found in the realm of architecture.
Frank Lloyd Wright, the American architect, is the great child of the kindergarten, and he spoke about it often. You can find the kindergarten in everything Wright ever did.
Wright was born in 1867, and his mom took classes in kindergarten education. And when Wright was young, his mother brought home a set of Froebel's gifts for him. This was young Wright's first taste of architectural design. Wright said that the moment he was given Froebel's gifts, he, quote, began to be an architect. He went on to say, for several years I sat at the little kindergarten table ruled by lines about 4 inches apart. But the smooth cardboard triangles and maple wood blocks were the most important. All are in my fingers to this day. Wright's designs were geometric, but they were also organic with careful attention to materials. And in letters and lectures and memoirs, he often gave lots of credit to his early experience with these toys and the lessons drawn from the pattern books created by kindergarten teachers.
You know, Wright's architecture has been described as pinwheeling, the overhanging roofs, the wide spreading arms, and that's just what the gifts do. He kind of blew out the Victorian American house from being a rectangle with a piece here, a piece here, a piece here, and that's exactly what you see in these books of patterns.
Growing up, Wright took courses in engineering, but he never studied architecture formally. And Wright wasn't the only one. European modernist architect Le Corbusier, like Wright, he never went to architecture school, but he did attend Froebelian schools in Switzerland.
Le Corbusier and Frank Lloyd Wright, considered by some the two most important architects, greatest architects of the 20th century, had exactly the same childhood education.
And Buckminster Fuller, famous for pioneering geodesic domes, first hit upon his greatest engineering insight as a kindergartner, connecting Froebelian peas and sticks.
There's a fantastic quote from Fuller. He says in this quote, God bless him, I couldn't really see very well, but I could tell that if I made a structure out of triangles, it was a lot sturdier than a structure made out of squares.
While most people looked at the world around them and built rectangular structures, this kid with poor vision and peas and a pile of sticks discovered the power of triangles. Obviously, everyone who attended kindergarten didn't become a Frank Lloyd Wright, or a Le Corbusier, or a Bucky, or a Kandinsky. But but the abstract lessons of kindergarten tilled and fertilized the ground, so the seed of their ideas could find purchase in the world.
Abstraction was accepted fairly quickly in Europe, in the art world. And I wondered if, because children had already been doing a lot of the same kinds of things for many decades, that was one of the reasons that they were not so shocked when art turned in that direction.
So in terms of 20th century art and design, kindergarten was an absolute triumph. But there was tragedy too. Friedrich Froebel got to witness the spread of kindergarten for only about a decade, but then his dream was cut short. In 1851, the Prussian government issued the Kindergartenverbot, a national ban on kindergartens, and Froebel died the very next year.
And you wonder if he died of a broken heart in 1852, of course.
Even though the ban stopped Froebel, it didn't stop kindergarten, far from it. The women he championed and placed in charge of all those little abstract artists were not deterred. They persisted and spread around the world. They spread the influence of kindergarten around the globe, and in the process, they did nothing less than create the 20th century.
I don't think Froebel had any idea this was going to influence art and architecture, and I don't think anybody else did either.
I think the teachers knew. I think teachers always know. So, we have a full version of that story that's produced by Kurt Kolstad, who's on my staff, and it's about 4 times as long. It comes out on Tuesday. It also features one of the AIGA award winners, Alexandra Lang, is in that piece, and so you can listen to that on Tuesday if you so desire. Hey, thanks for listening. So, I have a few announcements. We're delighted to welcome you to Pasadena. Just a few housekeeping rules for you before we truly begin. There's no flash photography. Please silence your cell phones. Wear your name badge at all times. It's the thing that gets you into all the programming and events. Some of the symposia presentations are being filmed, and they are noted with a tiny camera icon on them, and they'll be available on AIGA.org after the conference. During the next 3 days, if you ever need a hand, look for a trusted conference associate. They're wearing blue shirts, but the AIGA staff is in gray shirts. They're there to help you, so go ask a question. Trust me, they know more than you. And as you probably know, the design fair is located